No, I'm leaving after this. I have to go to Fenton to a softball game for Kelsey.
For the dedication.
Yeah, but I just think the charge for the game.
Testing one. Okay. I'd like to welcome you all here today on this special occasion where we dedicate and name our new refurbished baseball field. Before too long, we're going to bring out the honoree if he's making his way to the gate. And the family, if they would start heading this way, and we'll get you introduced. I want to thank all the people that made this possible. This field here has been kind of a 3-year process. A lot of baseball players and a lot of dads and Coach Elsbecker have put a lot of time into this new stadium here, and it's been a lot of work to put together, but it's been a lot of fun too, and we hope it'll be a privilege for our ball club to play here. So without further ado, we'll bring out the honoree today, Mr. Don Blanchard. Let's give him a hand today. Other family members that are here today, his sister, the baby sister of the family, there was 9 in that family if I remember right, Doris Schultz from here in Lone Rock. Daughter and son-in-law, Wendell and Donna Stevens from Fenton. Son and daughter-in-law, Craig and Linda Blanchard from Antigua, Wisconsin. Close enough. Daughter Susan Litke from Alexandria, Minnesota. Great-grandson Andrew Stephen from Spring, Texas. Niece Carol Olson from Armstrong, Iowa. And adopted family member Bethine Hovey from Lone Rock. Maybe you older people know all about Don, but some of you younger people may not. So I'm going to tell a little bit about Don and why we're doing this today. Don has almost been a lifelong resident of Lone Rock. He was born in 1911 and graduated from Lone Rock High School in 1929. And of course started for the baseball team along with some of his brothers, I'm sure. Don went on to college at Iowa State Teachers College, now called the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, where he lettered 3 years for the baseball team there and was their starting shortstop. Don went on to play minor league baseball for several organizations. In 1935, he played for Crookston, Minnesota. He was then sold to the Milwaukee Brewers organization, where he attended their spring training and played that year in Fielddale, Virginia. Don moved up a class the following years and played in Montgomery and Selma, Alabama, where he was named to the league's all-star team as shortstop. During these years, several sports writers were quoted as saying Don was the best shortstop in the minor leagues. Don was then sold to the Cincinnati Reds organization and played AAA ball with the St. Paul Saints in 1943. In 1945, Don took a job with the Plymouth, Iowa School District, where he was principal, taught social studies, coached baseball, basketball, and also said he drove the school bus. He just about did it all over there. During this time, he also played summer baseball with the 1945 state champions, the Albert Lee Packers, and also was player manager for the Mason City Legion team. In 1955, Don returned to Lone Rock and became principal here. The school building was right over there where the shelter house is. In 1958, Don became principal of the newly formed Central Community School District. He also taught government, social studies, world history, American history, coached baseball and basketball. In 1973, Don retired. I graduated in 1974. Did you know I was coming or what? Saw trouble coming, I think. What Don has given to the children of this community with his teaching and what he's given to baseball is immeasurable. And it's been an honor for us to do this. And now, to officially name this ballpark, we have John Cotton, who's been a lover of Lone Rock all his life, was born and raised here, and let's give him the floor at this time. John Cotton.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here. I guess in that whole profile, Don, they missed one thing, and that's 2 years with the Bancroft Lions. The reason I'd mention that is because Billy Dunning is over here, and Billy was one of the good catcher outfielders for the Bancroft Lions during that year. Let's give Billy Dunning a hand here, too. To this field and this ballpark brings back so many memories that for many of us were the highlight of our lives. It reminds us of a time when there wasn't any television and there weren't very many boats, and the boats weren't very high powered, so we stayed and played baseball, and that's what we did in the small towns. Junior Legion High School and town team. Sunday afternoon in Lone Rock and all the towns in northwest Iowa meant a ball game. We're here to honor our community's finest ball player. One of its best people, you all know that. And a member of an outstanding family that has meant so much to our community. A lot of you probably don't know that next August 27th, 2002, this ballpark will be 100 years old. The first recorded game was on August 27th, 1902. So there are a lot of ghosts and spirits around this old ballpark today. They're here to honor Don Blanchard. I'd like to think that all these ghosts and spirits are here with us today. And let's mention a few of them. From the outstanding 1919 to 1922 team, there's a catcher by the name of Alf Kruger. There's a second baseman by the name of Alex Kruger. The ghost of Glenn Chip Sharp is here today. He organized and managed Chip's All-Stars, an all-black team from Lone Rock that played here and in all parts of the upper Midwest. With them and in spirit today are some of his ball players. Many of you remember them. Fred Sims, Half Pint Vaughn. I'm going to look at you, Don. Charlie Hancock, and the catcher by the name of Casey. And Casey and I think Fred Sims and a couple stayed on into the 30s, and you played with those 2 or 3 guys, didn't you? And Chip was still managing, wasn't he, Don? Yeah. Don wasn't black, by the way. But they let him get by because he was a good fielder. The spirit of all those are with us today. The ghosts of the outstanding high school teams of the 1930s are here today. Don Blanchard played on that team, and so did Dude, who unfortunately, because of his health, can't be here today. Dude was, many of you remember, an outstanding pitcher. Gordon lives in Mason City and was a YMCA director there for a number of years. Lloyd Hutchinson played town team at that time. We all know what Lloyd has meant to this community. Town team and high school baseball stayed popular through the 40s and the 50s, and many of those players are here with us today. I see them and recognize them in the crowd. And it should also be mentioned, Central players, that Fenton had an outstanding Junior Legion team in 1948. They lost to Mason City in the state championship game. They were ahead until the last inning. and they lost to Mason City in a truly outstanding game. I remember listening to it on the radio. And Lone Rock was represented. They didn't play here. They played over at Fenton. Glenn Cage was one of the coaches, and then I think Arnie Keeker, someone took over after that. But there was Roger Long, who I think is Roger here? Where is he? Okay, Roger Long played on that team. Vic Dreyer, I think, was going to be here. Is Vic here? Vic played on that team, just an outstanding player. And Gene and Delbert, which we all call Tubby Blanchard, was on that team. And Kenny Flagg played it. And I believe those are the members. Roger, can you remember anybody else for that? And then from 1952 to 1957, we owe a lot to the Legion here in Lone Rock. They sponsored Junior Legion Baseball, which I will say personally was the greatest time I ever had in my life, and Dean Culbertson would say the same thing, and Gordy Hutchison and all the people that played on that team. It was a highlight of our lives. We played on this field, and then Marlon Bausman, our manager, had us playing all over. We played the big towns, and boy was it fun to beat the big towns. And we played all the way to Austin and Albert Lee and Mason City and Spencer and places like that, as well as the town of Bancroft, Billy, which always gave us the worst trouble. But it was great, and we're eternally grateful for that opportunity. And then in the 1950s, we got lucky because Coach came to town. And Coach was a high school coach for many of us here today. And he was just an outstanding coach, and we felt so lucky. We were scared because he brought a Plymouth team over at basketball, and he just chewed on them the whole game. They beat us by about 20 points. And I remember Denny Long saying, my gosh, what are we going to do? We're just going to be hide. There won't be any hide left on us when Don gets done. Well, he was far from that. He was great. He was a great coach and a great guy, and of course he was our principal as well. Well, there are other ghosts here, and I'd like to take the time to just mention. Some of them living, some of them are gone. But they're all here to honor Don today. I have to say, self-servingly, my grandfather who pitched the first game in 1902. And he thought the world of Don Blanchard, I might say, and the whole Blanchard family, for that matter. Eric Siegebarth. How could we not mention Eric Siegebarth? Is Lucille here? She's not here, unfortunately. Who devoted so much time in preparing the field and then working with us on our town team for so many years. Paul Bernard's here, likewise. Bill Batt, an old gnarled finger catcher, who had caught until he was probably 55 and he umpired. And he wasn't any better umpire, Don. At 55 than he was at 30, but he was the greatest guy in the world. My favorite umpire, Lawrence Newbrow, who always was so kind to us, and was an excellent umpire, and he was one of Don's high school teammates. And Billy Dunning, opposing coach B.J. Meyer, who from his perch in heaven on the edge of the dugout sends his best to Don. He's probably arguing the umpire right now, too. Anyway. And so does recent Heaven inductee Leon Zeke Barlow, who was just at his memorial service the other day, who was the second best shortstop this town has ever seen and was a personal friend of Don. And lastly, I suspect, Don, if you could listen closely, we could hear your sweetheart Mabel getting ready to play Take Me Out to the Ball Game or play the national anthem. And it would also be appropriate to say that I think Maud and Jess the old scorekeeper, would be very proud of you today. And this would be very meaningful to them. And Kent mentioned the Blanchard family. I'd like to go a step farther because they're a unique family in the history of Lone Rock, starting out really with the initial part. And I'd like to mention the members of this outstanding family, the brothers and sisters of Don. We all remember Harlan or Duck. Eugene, Gordon or Dude, Doris, who's with us today, Rita, Lucille, and Ursula, and Eugene. These were all part of our community, involved in so many ways. So we're here today in person or in spirit to honor a very, very special man who's achieved so much success in life and in so many ways. Not only as a shortstop for so many teams, but an excellent teacher and an excellent principal. A wonderful family man, an outstanding coach, a tough cribbage player, a Chicago Cubs fan. I wonder if he'd have wore that about 2 or 3 years. Now you got 113 in a row, now you got to wear your coat, don't you? And above all, as we all know, a great guy. Where's Coach Elsbecker? Coach, and to the Central players, you should know that so many of us here, both past and present, view this place as sacred ground. And what a thrill it is for us to see how this field looks, Coach, and for what you've done, Central players, to revitalize baseball, and for especially allowing us to honor Don Blanchard, especially so. So it's a real thrill on behalf of the Lone Rock community and the Central team to formally announce the naming of this place Don Blanchard Field, an honor you so richly deserve. Don.
Next on the agenda is Coach Elsbecker and a player representative.
Hello, Mr. Blanchard. This is the first time I've seen you or met you, but it's not the first time I've heard about you, because my father has told me a lot of stories about you. I've heard a lot of things down through the years, because baseball is such a game of tradition, handed down from father to son and grandfather to grandson, and that's the way I learned about you. And one of the quotes was, one of the pitchers that played with you said, if the ball was hit to short, they just ran towards the dugout because they knew the inning was over. This team here, we've put a lot of time in. We've put a lot of time in on the field. We've put a lot of time in on practice, and we're trying to teach these young men and you know, how the game of baseball works and the pride that it can teach them, the life skills that they can get from it, and, you know, learn about themselves. And then, of course, the pride it builds in your community goes along with that, and the families and friends and the community get to enjoy that as we go for a run at a state tournament here sometime in the future. We've got a young team now, but I told the guys tonight, they're not freshmen and sophomores, they got to be baseball players. So when we start being baseball players, we're going to be a lot of fun to watch. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I'm going to have Kellen Madison here is going to say a couple of words. Thanks.
Mr. Blanchard, on behalf of the Central Spartan baseball team, I'd like to congratulate you on your many accomplishments as a player and as a person. And as a token of our appreciation, I'd like to present you a Central Spartan baseball coat, a hat, and a ball signed by the 2001 Central Spartan baseball team.
Agenda is a couple words from the school. Mr. Stalker.
It is a pleasure to be here. Don, I've never met you lightly. It happened to be that when I was in high school, he was principal at Plymouth, and I played for Rudd High School. We went to Plymouth, and they had a tile floor, and I know that's why we got beat by about 1 point, and I think Gerald Hansen was one of the seniors that year. And a few other people that I know that you might have known. Dan Phelan, about a 6'7", left-handed first baseman, loved to hit home runs. I think Gus DeMarco played at Mason City, probably around the time you were around that area. When I told my brother that I had the honor today and privilege of being here to share with Don past, he said, "Oh, I remember him. He was quite a baseball player." And my other brother played for the Albert Lee Packers at one time, Ed Stalker. And he said, "Oh, he was a great shortstop." Now, we didn't know about Lone Rock when I was in high school, but they knew about you. So you traveled a long ways because we're from Rudd, Mason City area. The other thing is, I listened to John talk here. This is like the Field of Dreams. There's one thing missing, and that's the lights that you could use on this beautiful field. But I thought the history that I just heard was like watching the Field of Dreams and seeing that field with the lights turned on and the ball players coming out of the cornfield. And I thought, my goodness, am I in real life at Lone Rock, Iowa? And it is. And Don, I want to take and just share from the school that this is a wonderful day for the School of Central. I also want to share with you that these are wonderful young people that are here. These students are outstanding individuals. I've watched them this year as an interim superintendent, and you can be proud that they're representing the Central School. And I think that the job has been well done, just as it did when you were here at Lone Rock. Thank you for being here, Don.
Susan Blanchard first. A lot of the stories are things I was going to say. You baseball players who are waiting to play will be glad to know they've already been said. So that's going to cut mine down by about 45 minutes. But I was the only child of the three that never got to see Dad play baseball. But I heard lots of stories from a lot of you people sitting here and from Dad himself. And I know that he was a wonderful shortstop. And I know that he was an okay hitter, although he says he has trouble with the curveball, right? Yeah. And I knew that he hit a home run against Bob Feller. We've heard that story over and over and over, and that was just today. And that was the highlight of Dad's baseball career until today. And I think he would have to say this has now become even above hitting a home run off Bob Feller. This community, this School of Central, probably means more to Dad than anybody else here. And this baseball diamond right here, a lot of people have played on this baseball diamond that have been wonderful baseball players, and there's going to be some that are going to play today that I know are good baseball players. And the way this facility looks, this is going to stand for years, and there's going to be wonderful baseball players here. But there's never going to be a baseball player that loves the game any more than Dad. And as